The anti-heroes of Trainspotting keep on giving in Scottish author Irvine Welsh's new book Dead Men's Trousers, Anne-Marie Jackson, Toronto Star, Renton. Sick Boy, Spud, Begbie. The boys from Leith helped define Edinburgh and the UK's club and drug culture in the early 1990s in the cult classic book and movie Trainspotting. Irvine, Welsh author and a former heroin addict himself, has followed the gang in some of the more than 15 other books he's written, particularly 2002's Porno. It was made into the movie T2 Trainspotting. Now, it's 25 years later, and what's left of the gang have reached middle age. Of the four left, one of them is wearing the eponymous Dead Men's Trousers. They're not all getting out of this alive. Trainspotting was about betrayal, the second one, Porno, is about revenge, and this one's about redemption. You know, sort of a classic holy trinity in a way, says Welsh during a conversation in Toronto. We're in his publisher's offices and, at 11:30 in the morning, it's already his fourth interview of the day. These days, Renton, for those of you who know the movies, he was the lead played by Ewan McGregor, seems to have his life pretty much together, barring the slight addiction to sleeping pills. He's an agent for DJs, traveling around the world, booking them, minding them. He's trying to make reparations to Begbie by paying him back money he owes with inflation. Begbie's served time. He's now apparently living the good life in California, married a woman who came to prison to teach art, had 2 kids with her and is a wildly successful artist. Spud is still in Edinburgh and is, well, a bit of a loser. And Sick Boy runs an escort agency. With the exception of Spud, they're all successful in their own ways, but how much have they changed? Article continued below. This is a pre. Although he's not quite sure how, you don't know until you start writing, he does say that there would be much more of a challenge about their behavior. It's a book about male relationships and male friendships at a time when the term toxic masculinity has become part of mainstream nomenclature. Welsh refers back to the Thatcherite era and the loss of industrial jobs. When I look back at it now, it's the industrial working class, particularly men, who lost their livelihood and their kind of existential purpose in a way. It's a condition that's being mirrored now, living in transition times, not really sure of what's ahead. Now the population as a whole, the liberal, kind of chin-stroking intellectuals, are saying the very same things. It was poo-pooed when it was working-class people. It's interesting because insecurity has become much more widespread in whole society now, which might make this the perfect time to revisit the gang. Welsh is still occupied with ideas, of culture, of class, of how we act within them. This does not mean there's any less violence in this book, there's not. And much of it is gratuitous. The language hasn't cleaned up any. Nor does it mean they've grown up. They haven't, really. I think that's part of the modern condition, isn't it? We grow old, but we don't necessarily want to grow up. We are very much in the cult of the individual, Welsh says. Nevertheless, he explores the characters and the idea of redemption to sometimes hilarious, sometimes poignant and sometimes crazily violent effect. Renton wants Begbie to forgive him so he doesn't have to look over his shoulder, worried for his life. He wants to clear the slate by paying past debts. What does it mean for Begbie, a psychopath? Love and art, Welsh muses, are the usual paths to redemption. I threw lots of love and art at him and stuck him in the center of that, and thought, wouldn't it be interesting if he hadn't actually redeemed and was using these as a cloaking device for his other activities. Interesting is one way of describing the utterly violent and sometimes slapstick outcomes. Which maybe shouldn't come as much of a surprise. Although Welsh says that he probably is most like Renton, his life mirrors Begbie's in a way. He lives in Miami to Begbie's California, has a life where he can write, paint and even DJ occasionally. It's a far cry from Leith, the Port District of Edinburgh, which is part of popular culture because of two very different phenomena, Irvine Welsh and Trainspotting and the Proclaimers with their song, Sunshine on Leith. When I mention this to Welsh, he laughs. It's a working-class place, he says, but because it's a port there's always been these cosmopolitan influences, it's almost as if we've got the whole world as our oyster. Article continued below. I remember as a young guy the first would sit in bars and talk to all these old merchant seamen and they would tell me about ships in Montevideo and getting into drunken fights in Rio and being in the Baltic ports. You hear all these amazing stories and you think to yourself, this is a global place, and you think, I want some of this. This is kind of my destiny. I'm not going to be working at the factory up the road. Redemption is also about reinventing yourself, something with which Welsh is familiar. He quit heroin cold turkey, then devoted his 20s to making money in real estate. What an empty, useless pastime that is, riffing on the idea of endless possibilities, he says. When you get into expressing yourself creatively, whether it's as a writer, musician or artist, every new project's exciting because you start again as a blank page, you reinvent yourself. You have this whole world of possibilities, so is this the end of the road for the boys? For one of them it is, no spoilers. But there might be another prequel, Welsh says. There might even be a sequel with two of the main characters getting together. Or one of the minor characters in Trainspotting is still niggling away at Welsh. Which is to say, there might be uncertainty about the future, about masculinity, about politics, about growing up. But the page is still there, possibilities are still there, and there are still things to be resolved.